The pick is in for the New York Giants in the first round of the 2024 draft, and the Giants are going with Malik Nabers, LSU receiver. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about Nabers. I'm going to talk about why this was the right decision. And what about quarterback? We'll talk about that as well. All coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credentialed member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for Giants Country over on the Fan Nation Network. You can find my written work at si.com/NFL/Giants. And a special welcome on in to my Blue Crew community members, my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And don't forget, if you are watching on YouTube, to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and don't forget to click the little notification bell so that you get notified every time I post a new video. And on today's Locked On Giants podcast, the pick is in for the Giants. It's Malik Nabers, wide receiver, LSU. So we're going to talk a little bit about Nabers, the pick. I'm going to give you my instant reaction, what I like about his game, what I don't like about his game. Then I'm going to talk about why I think this was the right decision for the New York Giants. I know a lot of you out there wanted a quarterback. A lot of you out there are saying to yourselves, who's going to throw him the ball? We're going to talk about all that in segment 2. And then speaking of quarterbacks, I'm going to address that in segment 3. Where do they go from here now with the quarterback situation? So that is today's agenda. Let's hop right into it. Let's start off with Mr. Nabers, Malik Nabers. The Giants, as we all know, have lacked a true number one since the last time they had an LSU receiver on the roster, a guy by the name of Odell Beckham Jr. All right. Malik Nabers, at that point, the Giants taking him 6th overall after failing to trade up with the Patriots. Nabers is a guy who is an explosive receiver, a guy who can take the top off of defense, a guy who can run block if you need him to down the field. That's not why they brought him on board, but that's something he can do very well. He uses a good route tempo, keeps his feet moving. He separates well, finds soft spots in zone coverage. Just a lot of things this guy can do well. He can also play different, all 3 receiver positions. He's football savvy. And here's the important thing, folks. Not only is he going to make the receiver room better, all right? The receiver room of Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Jalen Hyatt, already pretty good, but now Nabers is going to make that room better. But he's also going to be a good addition for whoever the quarterback is this year, next year, and beyond, all right? Because you've got a guy now who can take the ball, take these shorter passes, and turn them into something special. But here's the most important thing and the biggest takeaway with Malik Nabers, all right? The important thing is that the Giants offense last year ranked dead last in explosive plays. They have been aspiring to become an explosive offense. So they need guys, obviously, who can separate, guys who can take the ball, catch, run, and, they're off to the races. They need guys who can, beat press coverage, find soft spots in the zone, like I talked about. These are all things that Malik Nabers can bring to the offense. So the Giants, who aspire to be more explosive, get more big plays, score more points, which was another problem that they had. Now you've got a number one receiver, a legitimate number one receiver who can do all that and then some for you. And, I like this pick. I really do. I know I've been talking about Roma Dunze, how he was, my dream pick for the Giants, and he actually went a little later on in the first round. But I don't hate this pick. I mean, I felt that the Giants really could not go wrong with any of the big three receivers. And, it's something that I've been saying for weeks, if not months, that a number one receiver would help a quarterback. Matter of fact, you look at the Giants team who they need to start getting better. Um, Malik Nabers is a guy who can help them with that. The Giants need to start winning a few more games than the 6 they won last year. So all of these factors are reasons why, Malik Nabers, for me at any rate, and I know some of you out there might feel differently, but for me, I like the pick. I really do. I think Joe Shane, did a good job with this one. Now, were a couple of things about Malik Nabers that I know I had concerns about. One of which was the shoulder injury that he had earlier in the season last year. He played through it and it was fine, but there was a report by Albert Breer that it was a situation that bears watching, that it's something that maybe he might need surgery on at the end of, the coming season. Nabers didn't want to get the surgery, I guess, before that because he didn't want to ruin his draft stock. That's something to keep an eye on. Okay. And I wonder if maybe that shoulder injury is the reason why he has trouble with the low part of his catch radius. That's one of the weaknesses in his game, that and the fact that, he basically ran a lot of vertical routes at LSU. So can he run some of the shorter stuff for them? But the low catch radius, if you ask him the high point, no problem. But if you ask him to low point a ball, that's where he kind of, needs a little bit more refinement in his game. So overall, solid pick. If I had to give it a grade, I would give that pick an A-. I like the pick. I think he's going to help them from day one. I think he's going to be a week one starter. Now, why do I think it was the right decision? I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, and I'm going to kind of cross into the quarterback discussion coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, we've all been there, either as a player or as a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure if you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep. Lift your head up and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly that you love, but it's on your phone, available anytime, and comes with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress with your buddies. And there's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, and even charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put your game face on, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or on Google Play.
This episode of your favorite Locked On podcast is brought to you by the best meal kit service in the game, Home Chef. No more having to answer the dreaded question, what are we going to do for dinner tonight? Thanks to Home Chef and their chef-designed recipes that are delivered directly to my door, all pre-packaged, pre-portioned. They even peel the garlic cloves for you. And each recipe, one of my favorites, blackened mahi-mahi, comes with a full page of easy-to-read instructions that include customization options and pictures to guide you along the way through the step-by-step process so you don't have to ask, is that what chard looks like? I cannot recommend Home Chef enough, especially right now, because for a limited time, Home Chef is giving Locked On listeners 18 free meals, free dessert for life, and of course, free shipping on your first box if you head to homechef.com/lockedon today. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 18 free meals and free dessert for life. Yes, you heard that right. Homechef.com/lockedon. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and we are going to have content for you all weekend long. And I know I said that I would have some short videos for you as well. I wasn't able to do one for round one of the draft. Unfortunately, I did not get a room to go and record for the Giants, so I apologize. I know a lot of you were waiting for it. Some of you reached out and said, hey, where's the video? I work with what they give me. That's what it boils down to. So I'm here. I'm here with the full video, and I hope you enjoy it all the same. All right. In this segment, let's talk about why the Giants made the right decision to draft a receiver as opposed to giving up a king's ransom for a quarterback. All right. Now, to give you a little background, before the draft started, there were reports that the Giants were on the phone with the New England Patriots. Now, here's the problem. The New England Patriots, I don't really believe ever had any intention of trading away the third overall pick. I really don't think they intended to, because they wanted a small king's ransom. And there was a report by ESPN that for the Giants to move up to number 3, they would have had to give up the 6th overall pick, which, you would expect, plus their second round pick in this year's draft and their number 1 pick in the following year's draft, 2025. Folks, you're talking about a 600-point difference on the draft value chart between the 3rd pick and the 6th pick. What the Patriots were allegedly looking for, that's outrageous, all right? No team was going to give them that. The Minnesota Vikings were supposedly in the mix as well to move up, and they weren't going to give all that stuff up. So, that being said, what does that tell us? The Giants may have, had affection for certain quarterbacks, the Drake Mays of the world, for example, but did they love him so much that they would have moved heaven and earth for him, the way Ernie Accorsi moved heaven and earth to get Eli Manning after the Chargers selected him back in 2004? The answer is no. And I thought that was very, very telling. Okay, so the Giants not willing to give up premium draft picks. If you remember, Joe Shane, way back earlier in the year, kind of was giddy over the fact that he had, at the time, I think he had 4 picks in the top 100. And of course, one was traded away in the Brian Burns acquisition. Now, I can't help but wonder if the Giants had had that 2nd pick, would they have made the deal to move up? I think they might have, but at the same time, to give up a number 1 pick next year, I don't think that would have sat too well with Joe Shane. That being said, you got to give Shane credit, because when it came to his time on the clock, he didn't reach for a quarterback. I mean, I'll go back to back in 2019 when the Giants took Daniel Jones. I thought that was a little bit of a reach to take him at 6. I thought Jones might go, to the Giants at 17, because remember they had 2 first-round draft picks that year. Also, why this was the right decision to go with the receiver. It fills a very big need, and I outlined that for you in the previous segment. Malik Nabers is going to be week 1 ready. He is going to play week 1, barring an injury. Okay, had the Giants taken a quarterback, that guy would not have played week 1. I can guarantee you that. He would have sat. The Giants have already said that Daniel Jones, once healthy, is going to be the starter. Okay, whether we like it or not, folks, Daniel Jones is going to be the starter once healthy. So you look at where the Giants are at. They have a bunch of needs. They only have, now they've got 5 more picks left to address these needs. And, they're filling out the roster. So they're taking the approach of, let's fill out the roster and then we'll worry about the quarterback. Now, the question is will they be high enough to draft next year to get a good quarterback? Well, some might say yes. Some might say, well, we'll see. But we've got to see how it all unfolds. Right now, it's a little too early, I think, to be thinking about 2025 and what the situation will look like there. So that all being said, you've got a guy who can help with the offense, like I talked about before, make it a little bit closer to being the explosive offense that the coaches aspire it to be. And you've got a guy who can help the quarterback, regardless of who the quarterback is, because he can get open with consistency and regularity. He can make plays for you. That's something that, you look at other teams and you see receivers, like a Justin Jefferson, or down in Kansas City, a Travis Kelce, or over in Philly, A.J. Brown, who just signed a new big contract, and Devonta Smith. And you sit there, or down in Dallas, C.D. Lamb, and you sit there and you say, gosh, why can't the Giants have that? Well, Malik Nabers takes a decent enough receiver room of Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, and he's made it that much better. And really, folks, can you argue with that? I mean, we all know what the problems were. And I know some of you are sitting there and you're listening to this and you're saying, well, who's going to throw him the ball? Well, I'm going to get to that in a minute. I mean, obviously, we know it's going to be Daniel Jones once he is healthy, but we'll talk a little bit more about that and, who's going to throw him the ball. But I like this move. I think it was the right decision for the Giants. I think the Giants, could they have gone quarterback, gotten J.J. McCarthy? Sure, they could have. Would that have been a reach? I think it would have. McCarthy went, I think, a few spots afterwards. At 6, Joe Schoen stood by his board. And that's important. You don't want to be reaching for players, because when you start reaching, that's when you're going to screw yourself up. And, the Giants, they didn't do that. They went with the best value. Marvin Harrison had been off the board by the time the Giants were on the clock. Malik Nabers was a guy that they had been linked to, and they just followed their hearts on that. So, and it did cost them a single, it didn't cost them, which was a good thing. So anyway, the question now becomes, what about the quarterback? What are the Giants' plans at quarterback? Where do they stand? Who's left on the board? And might the Giants address quarterback? I'm going to go over all that with you right after this. Hey, Giant fans, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. They help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but who might be open to the perfect role. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours when they use LinkedIn. And did you know that LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier? They've just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process quicker. Find out why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring by posting your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Giants welcome in Malik Nabers, their wide receiver, their new wide receiver one. Big acquisition. But a lot of you are probably saying to yourselves, well, what about quarterback? Do we really have to sit through another year of Daniel Jones? And what happens now? Do the Giants maybe look to get a quarterback on day 2 or day 3? Or what's the plan here? Well, I'm going to give you a few thoughts on that, obviously. I mentioned already that what the Patriots were reportedly looking to get in a trade, Giants just weren't going to do it. They didn't have the assets to do it. All right, so what does this mean for the quarterback? Well, the Giants all along have said that the expectation is for Daniel Jones to start once healthy. But here's the wild card, ladies and gentlemen. Drew Lock is the wild card. Now, Drew Lock, if I remember correctly, is a former number 1 pick. I know he didn't catch on in Denver, where he was originally drafted. I know he lost out to Geno Smith in Seattle. But is it possible that maybe the Giants are saying to themselves, okay, Brian Daboll has had success developing quarterbacks. He did so with Josh Allen up in Buffalo. He helped make Tyrod Taylor a little bit better player than when he first came to the Giants. Are the Giants maybe hoping that they can groom Drew Lock to where, if God forbid Daniel Jones gets hurt again, and his injury history suggests that that is a very strong possibility, that maybe, just maybe, Drew Lock can be, I don't want to say the long-term answer, but an answer if they need to, kind of plug in that spot. It's a possibility, folks. Don't rule it out. Because as I said earlier in the program, if the Giants were that in love with Drake May, they would have moved heaven and earth to get him. They would have said, the heck with it. We'll shortchange ourselves and we'll make these whatever picks we have left count for something. But also worth noting, ladies and gentlemen, is that I've said this before also on the podcast, but a lot of people who are, have done draft work and who are part of the NFL scouting community have told me that once you get to the 4th round, midway through is when the talent starts to go off a cliff. So that probably factored into Joe Shane's thinking with regards to trading up. So Drew Lock, I think, is a wild card here. And let's not discount Tommy DeVito. I mean, I don't think Tommy DeVito is going to be a starter. I think he's going to be maybe a career backup type of guy. But, the Giants like him. They want to continue developing him. Great. Okay, go for it. But Lock is the guy I would keep an eye on, especially if, God forbid, Daniel Jones gets hurt again. And, now that's not to say that the Giants won't look at quarterback later in the draft. There are some interesting guys who are still on the board. All right. So let's take a look at some of them who are still on the board. You have, let's see, I'm just going to pull it up real quick here. You have Spencer Rattler is on the board still. You have Michael Pratt of Tulane. You have Joe Milton of Tennessee. Maybe Joe Milton as a developmental prospect. They bring him on board. Sam Hartman of Notre Dame is still there. Let's see. Tua's brother, Tagliavola, I think is how you say the name. He's on the board. So there were some quarterbacks still on there. Austin Reed of Western Kentucky. But now, of course, you're getting into the developmental area. So ask yourself this, folks. Are the Giants maybe looking to get a guy and just put him on the practice squad and just develop him, as well as, continuing to develop Drew Lock and continuing to work with Daniel Jones? I think that makes sense. I think that's maybe what the Giants' thinking is. All right. So that being said, what did the Giants do in round 2? I'm saying cornerback. I'm going on record right now and saying that they got to get cornerback. I think only 3 cornerbacks went in the first round of the draft. And there is a lot of interesting talent at cornerback available. Let's take a look at some of the names here. So you've got Max Melton of Rutgers, who's available. You have Kool-Aid McKinstry of Alabama, Cooper DeJean of Iowa, Enos Rakestraw Jr., Renardo Green. Let me see who else we have. We have TJ Tampa of Iowa State. There is a lot of good cornerback talent sitting there, just waiting to be had in the second round. That's where I think the Giants are going to go when they get back on the clock on Friday. Now, do I think the Giants will trade up to get a cornerback? Possibly. Might they trade back? That's a possibility too. It all depends on how the second round starts off. I think there might be a run on cornerbacks. The cornerback class is a little bit heavy in terms of slot guys as opposed to pure outside guys, but cornerback too is a glaring need. And I know some of you don't want to hear this, but if you had to take your choice between which is the bigger need right now, cornerback 2 or quarterback, I think you'd have to go with cornerback at this point because who's going to start opposite of Deonte Banks? We don't know. So that being said, that's the direction I think the Giants go in as they open day 2 of the NFL draft. But of course, we'll see, Joe Shane and the Giants, they see their needs differently than you and I do. We'll see if they agree. And if they do, great. If they don't, then we'll just cover it for you and bring you all the breakdowns like always here on the Locked On Giants podcast. So that said, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in and for your patience as I got this together. We'll have videos for you all weekend long, including a wrap-up video on what the Giants did with their picks, as well as breakdowns of subsequent picks. So that's all coming up for you on the Locked On Giants podcast. I will see you, ladies and gentlemen, again tomorrow.